Hi, my name's Leo Thompson. I'm speaking to you from here in Vienna, in Austria. Really excited to have this conversation with Prosper on Live Long and the Prosperity Show. We're going to talk about sort of transferable wisdom from the world of education. And when I say not the boring world of education, but the exciting future of education that you could potentially use and apply in what you do and in your business. Really looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're about to embark on a journey of discovery, growth, and maybe a little bit of laughter. Now, Leo, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Greetings from Vienna in Austria. It's 7:30 in the morning here. So this is the earliest podcast I've ever done. So I'm going to see how it goes, but I'm open to it. But you've been putting a smile on my face already, Prosper. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. Kannst du Deutsch sprechen, oder?
Ja, mein Deutsch ist perfekt.
Mein Deutsch is echte Scheiße. So I have to speak to the English that way.
I won't translate that for the audience. I think they can figure it out.
Well, that's the good use of editing. There's going to be a lot of blips in that one particular German statement that I put out there. But thank you so much for obviously gracing the morning and joining us on the Online Prosperity Show. And let's just make it worth your while. And for those that are watching right now, I think you're in for a treat because our guest today is Leo Thompson, who's the founder of Edsplorer, a trailblazing platform revolutionizing education. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're used to listening to podcasts and videos of internet explorers, but today we're going the education route. So while most educators are busy teaching formulas and helping people write corrections or putting people in detention, Leo is out there rewriting the rule book, combining technology, creativity, and a passion of learning into making education accessible, engaging, and downright fun. And if how he has been speaking to me is any proof of the way he operates, man, those kids are going to be learning so much and having fun along the way. But here's the kicker. Leo is actually Lloyd Thompson's older brother. For those of you that have been watching this show, you would have seen that me and Lloyd go a long way, and Leo also wanted part of the action. Okay, and I'm really excited about what's going to be happening today. I'm secretly going to be judging which is the best of the brothers. So so beyond all this family drama and dynamics, I think Leo's story is one of resilience, transformation, and relentless drive to empower others through innovative education solutions. So in this episode, we're going to dig into the why beyond Leo's mission, the challenges he's faced, bringing Edsplorer to life, and also the invisible lessons that he's learned along the way. And who says that teachers cannot learn as they go along? Sorry, Leo, I keep calling you a teacher because I haven't been formally, exposed to the kind of things that you do. Tell us a little bit about your story and your journey so far and what has inspired you to create Edsplorer.
Wow. Well, I've never had an introduction like that, so thank you. Now I've got to live with the pressure of competing with my brother. Explorer has a really quite unique sort of like background, really, and it's what we call a portmanteau word. As you can guess, it's two words put together. So we've glued education and exploration. And it's the idea of like being really inquisitive and wanting to know more about education in the world. And the world moves so fast. I mean, we're all aware of that, not just pandemics, technology and politics right now, and TikTok. So how does one keep up to speed with that? And I think for that, you've really got to be asking a lot of questions and be like really curious. So it's also me. It's very much like how I am, and I'm just a naturally curious person and want to try and figure out, the world and make sense of it, and then what's my, place in it as well. And I think it was maybe in Aristotle, certainly one of the ancient Greeks, who said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think that for me is really kind of like part of what I do and identity. So my story goes way back, but Edsplorer is a fairly new creation. It's about 4 months old, so I'm just a baby, and I've come out of education as a consultant to build my own sort of like independent consultancy, which is a boring word for it, but it's really about trying to connect people around a vision to improve learning across the world, based on research and based on the insights from the learning sciences, and just try and improve the world for children and the learning for children. So there's so many issues and so many challenges in the world, and threats to children as well, including mental health, with those things going on right now. So, how could we improve that and change the education system in a way that learning is really enjoyable, it's motivating, it's meaningful, it feels relevant to kids, and also creates future options for them. So I don't want to talk too much because I want to hear what your insights are coming from the people that you work with and the industries that you work with. But yeah, I'm proud to be a teacher in disguise is how I would describe myself. In terms of I don't dress like a teacher anymore, and I'm not working in schools as a teacher, but it's part of my DNA, and trying to share things to help people that they may find useful for their futures.
Thank you so much for taking us on that journey, because for a lot of people, school just represents either a happy time when they were kids or a traumatic time when they were bullied, as high school kids. What has been the overall sort of perception, that has now led the need for something like Edsplorer to come to life?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously, everyone's got a different background and different experience of school. And as you say, sometimes it was more positive and sometimes it's sided onto the more negative. There's so many conversations going on in the world right now. And I think a lot of those were galvanized by the pandemic, that sort of lockdowns, homeschooling or remote schooling, and to kind of reimagine what schooling might look like and how to make it more relevant to children. And then I think more fuel has been added to that conversation, with AI and just how rapid that's come on in everybody's perception. And then, environmental change and politics and DEI and all of these things are big conversations in this melting pot around education. Education's huge. I mean, I read this statistic the other day. It's something between 5 million and 8 million schools in the world, which is a staggering number. And nobody can pin it down exactly because, you've also got institutes, universities, tertiary. It's just enormous, like beast. And it's different everywhere you go, but there are some like themes and well-being and stress and mental health issues and pressure and hyper assessment are problems in the education system, and then you've got these other conversations about how can we make learning more relevant to kids, because what does this make a link to what you do, businesses and companies, what sort of people do they want that are emerging from the education system that are going to have the right mindset and the right skills to be really employable and help their businesses thrive. And one of the big dialogues, and this won't surprise you, is education is often very heavy on content driven, sort of memory, rote learning systems, and just examining memory. But is that even relevant anymore when you've got, portable brains and technology that you can use to find things, research things, store things, and retain things? What does learning now need to look like in that world? So this whole thing of textbooks and memorization is really under intense critique about how learning needs to shift, as it should be more focused on problem solving skills or communication skills or creativity. And so all of that kind of energized, I think, the work of Edsplorer, and trying to pick out the things which would be most valuable for schools to pivot to and focus on, that will support those children in their future. And so it's not just what societies need, what do schools need, but it's what do the kids need, so that they've got a good shot, at thriving and doing well and living life on their terms. Well, it's all so heavy, isn't it? I should. I said I wouldn't be too heavy into,
Absolutely.
educationally.
Well, bring it on. We will have time to do homework later. But Leo, this is quite interesting. I mean, obviously, you would have had your own experiences, with school, and things that then led you to be involved in the education world. What sort of highlights can you bring to light of the things that when you were going through the school and education system, you were like, you know what? This happened to me, and that's the reason why I'm doing this today.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's like with any industry, why does somebody go into it? I was the last person I thought would go into education. You have to picture me, little 12-year-old or 10-year-old Leo, or I was a pretty naughty boy. I was a single parent family. Unfortunately, parents separated when I was 4. So you mentioned the word trauma. It was quite traumatic. I didn't realize that how much at the time, but this happens to millions of kids around the world. And I fell in with a crowd of other kids who weren't particularly motivated or focused on school. I think, they had their own issues and socio-economic issues as well in their families. So I was not your typical candidate. I wasn't a grade A student all the way through. I did really well in some subjects. I was terrible in others and do my homework. I was not your natural candidate. Weirdly enough, though, I always loved learning and I always enjoyed reading. And I wouldn't read often what the teachers told me to read, but I would be reading and checking out books. So my affinity for learning has always been there. So I came in as a teacher. I decided to train as a teacher. It was my third career. I worked in technology for a while, sales and marketing, and then it became sort of tech solutions for companies. And I also did spell in electrical engineering for about 3 or 4 years. So I didn't come in as a teacher until I was nearly 30, and it was my third career. But at a point where I just thought, actually, this is really meaningful. And I get to work with young children who are a bit like me, lost their place, lost their way, and maybe were traumatized by school. And I wanted to turn that around and just give them a positive experience and, set them up on their learning journey. It's not about exams for me or about the assessments. Yeah, that's important. That's a means to an end, but it's about a deep love of learning and trying to engender that in children.
Absolutely. You see, the reason why things like this matter is because this means something to you. I mean, as that kid that was going through all of these things, were there any teachers that maybe stood out that would have noticed that there was issues back at home, and then maybe they would have allowed you to maybe learn at your own pace based on the things that you were going through? Or were you all just funneled into the same tests and same exams and same everything else that every other kid who came from a well-to-do family or balanced background was also being exposed to?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you were talking to Lloyd, Lloyd sort of referenced where we grew up in this place called Aldershot, which is a very military area. So a lot of the kids from, our catchment area, their dads were paras or commandos and often away, and so mum was having to grapple with dealing with the kids whilst dad was away. And so we went to a school that was quite dog eat dog, quite physical, and a lot of scraps and fights and things. I won't mention the school because they won't like the PR, but there was some really fantastic educators in there. And I don't remember them, taking me aside much and giving me pep talks or, that sort of thing or one-to-ones. But I do remember them being good people, and caring, and there was a sense of fun and closeness. And two or three of those educators really stood out, just encouraged me with the sports or some other interests that I had, championed me a little bit, gave me some nice belief stuff, but mainly in the classroom setting. And that was very valuable. And there's an effect, if I can be a little bit educationally just for a second. It's called the Pygmalion effect. We can all relate to this. The Pygmalion effect is when usually an adult, but it can be a colleague or it could be a friend, expresses belief in you, and also high expectations, that they convey to you that they believe in you and that you can do well, and that they have high expectations. And when those seeds are sown in you, that builds your own self-confidence. That's called the Galatio effect. And that then can grow. So if a teacher believes in you when you're really young and says something, so, hey, you got something that's really quite special, or you got something there that you could really grow and take into life. It could be your character, it could be part of your skills, anything at all. It's like a seed that's planted in the subconsciousness, and then that can grow inside you, and can carry you through life. And so that Pygmalion effect, which was a play by George Bernard Shaw, it goes back to again Greek mythology, is really powerful and is often not used effectively enough. So there's teachers who shine at doing that, and there's others who are like, no, I'm just a math teacher, and you're not. You're somebody who is growing young people, and also teaching maths is the way I would put that.
Absolutely. And obviously, where you are right now in Austria, that's not where you grew up, right? That's a place where you actually had to go to, and the people you are influencing or had the opportunity to
Mm.
influence are
Yeah.
kids that are looking at a foreign person coming in and they're learning to see how this is different for them. Would that be the
Mm.
issue that you?
Kind of. So I work in international education. So I worked as a teacher, as a head of school as well. And these were like mainly diverse international schools. So in terms of local, Austrian, I worked in one school which was about 10 to 15% Austrian, but it had 104 nationalities.
Mm,
104. So it's like, and between them, they spoke more than 70 different languages. And so this is like this intercultural sort of melting pot, which I absolutely love. I love diversity of people, different walks of life, different backgrounds. So I work more in international education, which is typically more private schools. And they're all over the world because they're serving the needs of the expats and the companies that they need an expatriate workforce or expertise. And so that's kind of been the arena I'm in. But wherever I've been, yeah, I've been a foreign teacher. I've been somebody from a different culture and a different place, trying to share something that will help those children in their curriculum and in their local context.
absolutely. So assembly time on a Monday morning, it's just like being at the United Nations, right?
It
Every
is. It is. No. The school I worked in Vienna was about 60, 70% of the staff or the parents, sponsoring the children were from the UN.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to be one of the people that walks in in the field during the Olympics because I'll be like, "Yay, Australia!" and somebody's like, "No, England,"
Ah,
different
it's
team.
great. It's a festival of flags, and and but that's such, you know, a great thing. And like you got to celebrate where you're from, your roots, who you are,
Yeah,
your richness, your language, your humor, your music.
yeah.
But you can also celebrate other people and what they do. You know, they have these big days called international evenings where everyone, you know, troops in their local color and their fashions and their pageantry. It's great, and the food, which is the best bit, and it's great.
Absolutely. Now, Leo, I think you're gonna love this. You see, I'm from Zimbabwe. I don't know if you know where that is. Okay, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
obviously,
do.
with
I know where it is. Yeah,
your diverse people that you were meeting, you would have an
yeah,
understanding. So, when I was 13 years old, we had an exchange student teacher who came in from Australia, and literally, she changed the course of my life. The reason why that was possible was the situation that was happening in Zimbabwe at that time was not allowing for any progress. You know, whatever you would have done in school, you wouldn't really amount to anything because the economy was that bad. So everybody had given up hope. But when she came in, she sort of planted those seeds you're talking about of, you know, that you can be, do, and have a happier existence if you just apply yourself and you can go and teach other people in a place that's not here. So that's the reason why I was asking those types of questions, because it takes another person from somewhere else with a whole different view on life that could completely change, you know, the viewpoint of any kid. And I'm proof positive that this is it.
mm,
You can be, do, and have whatever you want in life if you just apply yourself. And those
yeah.
were the words of my maths teacher at 13 years old.
That's fantastic. Are you still in touch with her at all, by any chance?
We actually did a whole expose of this whole thing, and yeah, I contact her
Brilliant.
every now and again. I mean, obviously she likes to live her private life, but we actually had our reunion televised because it was that much of a big impact of a story that
Yeah.
that the story had to be told.
Yeah, I'm sure she's proud of that as well. So you're flying the flag for Zimbabwe, and obviously you're a great citizen there in Australia as well. And it's. I mean, I've listened to a few of your sort of episodes. I knew you were from Zimbabwe, but and I think that's great. You know, and that's the way it should be as well. You know, you've moved, and you know you've found something that's meaningful for you that you enjoy doing. Japanese concept. Everyone talks about Japanese concepts in business. Well, one of the ikigai,
Yeah,
you know, about finding something that you're good at, you're meaningful, you get paid for it, and you know, it kind of like you're bringing good to the world as well at the same time. You know, you're contributing. That's what it's all
absolutely.
about. That's what I want every kid to find is their ikigai, and you know what's going to work for them. And because we're all so different, and what works for us is different to the person who sat next to you when you're in the uniform. You know, when you're 10 years of age, we all go in different paths.
Absolutely, absolutely. But like you said, you had three sort of careers before you started Edsplorer. Now, obviously, building a platform like this is not something that's easy. What were some of the biggest leaps of faith that you had to take, and taking into consideration that you're tackling an industry that is as old as, you know, the world itself. Education has always been there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of an irony because you know when by some people I'd be considered to be an educational expert, you know, given my background and you know my career, you know, to date. I'm definitely not an expert entrepreneur, but I did have time in the IT industry, and I had some time in the engineering sort of industry as well, electrical engineering, when I was young, and I kind of did get a bit of a training in sales and marketing, and you know the theory behind it, always be closing, you know, stuff like that. And that said, going out and forming your own entity, wow, you know, that is some pressure. And I've made so many mistakes so far. I'm only, you know, literally this entity is 4 months old. And I really have empathy for anybody who takes a risk and tries to set up an organization around what they, you know, their purpose, those sort of practical visionaries. And I think that's, that's huge. And it's scary. So, there's that angst and anxiety, that 3 a.m. thing. Oh, I should have sent that email. Oh, I didn't follow up. There's a lot of reminders from your subconsciousness about what you should have done. And, so uh, yeah, it's been a really interesting time. Fortunately, I've got some people who've offered me some good advice. Lloyd is one, my brother, but a range of people who are, I'd say, really successful, entrepreneurs in their own right. And they talk about the good struggle and things that you got to fail forward, right? And there's a great little term we use with students sometimes about the FAIL acronym, right? First attempt in learning. First attempt in learning. And I think that's a really good adage for business where, you're trying things out. That didn't work. I thought it would work. I'm surprised. So I need to go and find another way. So I'm having to do quite a lot of that and pivoting, right now, despite having a fairly good grounding in the concepts behind, business and how to be relevant and lead magnets and things like this. So it's definitely an interesting time, to use a euphemism.
Absolutely, and congratulations. I mean, the one thing that you've absolutely done for yourself here, Leah, is you went on and got started. Some people will still be twiddling their thumbs, waiting for that time, and time will never come for you. But
Mm.
then there's a whole different concept when it comes to starting a business, especially coming from an educational front. Excuse me if I'm misdirected in this, but I viscerally believe in the education realm, you're meant to have things correct. Okay. The answer has to be
Mm.
1 plus 1 is 1. Whereas in business, this is a long way towards lead generation, but it still will lead to the answer. But if you can't prove that concept, then we can't use that. How are you navigating that aspect of always wanting to have the correct answer when you're going into a thing like this?
That's a great observation. I think that's also true, and education really should be peddling in the truth. You should be looking for truth, sharing truth, and truth essentially should be reliable knowledge. There's a term that we use in critical sort of theory around learning, and it's about truth is really justified sort of belief in something, and yeah, it's true. Like when I'm setting up things, you want to make the right decision, you want to be sure of it, you want to make sure this is the right way to go. But the reality is, it is different to a classroom, or it's different to a curriculum, which is the product of people have fought for knowledge over the years. They've sweated to find truth, but you don't have such certainty in the business world, and you've, as you know, because you are an expert in the business world, but you're always seeking to shine a light on that insight, that actionable insight, that decision that would be better for you and you'd be better served. So it's a sort of like wrestle between the two. And yeah, I've got to accept, I've got to live with the fact that I don't have as many of the answers and certainty as I would normally like. Yeah.
But what are some of the similarities that you're like, oh, I like this because I've come across this, in my travels, which is not making it even, a harder slog for you to bring Edsplorer to light.
Yeah, I think the business mindset that one needs, to be a champion in business is actually the same as the one you would need to be a great learner, per se, and in school. And this is not something that schools typically teach. And if you can take this as a patchwork of insights. So you've got behind you, got a bookshelf full of books, and I'm sure you've been a really good student and you've read them all and you've made studious notes. So I read as well. So I read from a lot of the sort of sciences around learning. I've just got a patchwork of books here and so forth. And so much of the insights from these books are about mindset. And I think that's really, really valuable for anyone who's running a business. I'm not on your show to tell people how to run business, clearly, but I see such parallels in having something like a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, which is so valuable for anyone who's running a business, because you're going to experience failure and setbacks, but you've got to believe in the potential to succeed. A great student, a great learner is always going to be asking questions and be inquiring, and be curious. And I think it's the same with people who run businesses. They need more information and need to know. And the way that you view mistakes, like we talked about, failing forward, learning from it, and developing that sort of that wisdom. It's called crystallized intelligence, which is what you've learned and your education that then journeys with you through life, so you can make wiser decisions. That's the same for a child, that's learning in a school environment, but also the same for an adult who's running a business. So desirable difficulty, it's a buzzword, it's a term, but the good struggle, the things that will challenge you and provoke you the most are also the ones where children learn best, those situations. Because they've got to invest energy into it. And it's a signal to the brain to say this is important, and therefore they'll take more away. It's the same for a business. The sense of desirable difficulty, you've got to, if you've ignored a good struggle and you don't do what you should be doing, the hard yards, looking at your data, looking at your feedback, customer response rate, you're going to struggle because you're not using that data, even though it might be a little bit ugly. And so that sense of striving or doing the things you hate doing, being the business janitor or sending out those cold emails when you'd much rather be focusing on product or the offering, that's desirable difficulty. So all these borrowed concepts, you can totally share and you can extend them into the business world, but also into the classroom. So I think what I'm really saying is there's so much transportable parallel wisdom that can be applied in both settings. I don't know how you see it. Is that the way you see it as well, Prosper?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of components and ingredients that make education possible. Okay, you got to have an audience, which is the students, and you got to have a message, which is the lesson that you're going to be sending it to them, and there's got to be some form of consistency. All right, so if you put that in the form of your LinkedIn or your business in and of itself, you are going to need to have a message which you're going to be delivering to an audience consistently up until they have grasped what it is that you can help them with. And then from then on, obviously, we don't have tests or exams at the end of it, because it won't be in the test, but what I'm about to ask you will be at the end of it all. So those might just seem like it's two different worlds, but you need an audience, a message, and a bit of consistency in order for that to happen.
What you remind me of is I think the best education is experiential, and it's real world. Surely that's the test, the university of life stuff and just being streetwise. And at the end of the day, education can easily be a bubble, like a cerebral bubble that, again, lives in textbooks and things. But that's not the best learning, and that's not the most relevant learning. And what you're doing when you're setting up a business, you're an entrepreneur, you are doing real world, practical, getting feedback instantaneously, which will help you learn. And that would actually be the most relevant and useful form of learning for students as well. Where you're getting rapid feedback, processing it, critiquing it, and then deciding what's next. So the sort of learning you get in the business world, this real world, almost project-based learning, is proven to be, also with the neurosciences, the most engaging, valuable learning as well. And the more schools move in that direction, the more relevant the learning is, more enjoyable, and the more the kids are being prepared to be very employable, because they would have had experience in doing exactly what companies need, around this problem solving sort of area. So I just interjected it. I was bad. You could put me in the corner for that, Prosper. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, there's not going to be any after podcast detention, in this realm. So I'll get you to write on your Facebook or on your LinkedIn status, I will not interject Prosper again until
Yeah. Until the next time.
but obviously Leo, we this thing that you're working on, you're not just reshaping how we learn, but you also how we actually think about education, because from what you're saying, it's not a top down, because I said so type education, which most of us have been relegated to. And I think that world no longer exists, because the classroom was deconstructed during COVID. And I think
Right.
we haven't gotten back to putting it together again like Humpty Dumpty. Because once kids knew they could learn from Zoom without having to smell each other's, armpits, it changed the way that people wanted to engage with education. I don't know what you
I
think.
love that. You should have been a poet. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. No, I love the way you use language. Yeah, I think it's been a game changer. I would say some parts of the world they have gone back, but one of the small silver linings of the pandemic, which obviously was catastrophic for so many people. I don't want to play that down, but one of the silver linings is people became more tech ready and they became more agile, and the internet is just such a wealth of potentially brilliant information, and then the way technology can garner it and pull it together now. The conversation for me now is not so much education, it's learning. It's learning. And like it's like if you broaden that question and we apply that to the business world as well, it's about intelligence, it's about critical thinking, it's about application, it's about creativity. And just the whole thing needs to be reframed, and just learning per se, and not just a narrowed learning of like what do I need to know to get to Stanford, but learning that's holistic, and it's about social emotional learning. It's about learning to be a great communicator. It's about skills. So moving from that rote memory thing to skills, character development, that's a much more relevant education, model in this century, moving at the pace we're moving. That's important, and those are the sort of questions that take up my day. And my LinkedIn knows that, so it's always sending me the algorithm stuff, about what's relevant now. What does education need to put its prints on or its finger on to change things?
So the education we know, Leo, is all about the standardized curriculum, teacher certifications, specialized buildings where people have to report, and if you don't report at a specific time and date, you might miss out on what's happening. But education can now, and learning can now happen everywhere, can now happen anywhere, even in the car driving kids to school. They could actually learn more than they could possibly do in a whole full day in that space that you have during that time. So this is not only about teachers. What are you also working with parents, or
Yeah.
is that something that you'll be looking into, moving forward? Because
Yeah.
it affects both
Yeah,
ways.
it's a great question, and I think it's absolutely true. Information and knowledge can come from any source and anywhere, and obviously you've got to vet it to see if it's useful, valuable, credible. But you can get it from anywhere now, and it does ask that big question: why school? And what's the value of school? But obviously, I'm a great believer in human engagement and human supporting younger people for their holistic development. With parents, often have an old school paradigm. They think of school, they imagine school as this place that is textbook driven, exam driven, because that's what they experienced, and often they will project that model. Not all parents, and we shouldn't generalize, because there's parents who'll be like, that's what I don't want for my kids, and then some parents may have gone to progressive schools, which use different techniques as well. The education system, though, it's mandated, it's got compulsory elements. It's kind of like the government says you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to jump through these hoops. So the people who are really progressive are like, okay, these are the rules of the game right now, but how can we work within those restraints to make education more engaging or interesting? So you play the game, but you're just pushing away at the edges of it, making sure the kids are still successful, but that they identify as learners and that they enjoy school. Because I think if you don't, then you've already been, it's not a curse for life, but you may be slightly impeded because you're put off learning. And yet learning it's a survival aspect for humans. We need to be learners.
I absolutely believe in life. We're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And if you really
Right.
want to live the best life possible, you need to learn everything there is for you to be, do, and have that. And then pretty much after that, you then send the elevator down and contribute to others so they too can be, do, and have a happier existence. And I think you're in the contribution side of things because not only are you opening the classroom, but you're opening the world to this new education philosophy, which might change the way things are done. So, especially on that front, good on you, sir. But has your own perspective on education changed since you started this journey as an entrepreneur?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, before as well, before I went into it. But I think everything you said there about contributing probably just tells me I'm getting old. You get that sort of like feedback in your body and your organism. It's like, no, you need to do more now. You've reached that stage in life where you've got to give a little bit more. I mean, I've always seen education as a noble profession. But my perspective on it has changed because I've held different roles, and my perspective was different as a teacher. And then when I became a head of school, it was a different perspective. Then I became a consultant, was another perspective, and now somebody as a founder is a different perspective. And I guess you've got to piece that all together, and it's this giant jigsaw puzzle, and you've got to try and like solve it. But what makes it uniquely problematic is that jigsaw puzzle looks different for everybody who's in it. So they might not agree with your jigsaw puzzle. And so it's really just using a lot of intelligence and feedback and I guess it's the same for business, any business, to get those bits of information so you get an accurate picture, an accurate portrayal, and then make your decisions around that. And so, it's an interesting time because it's about sense making in my context, and then how do I do that best, and then who can you rely on to give you information that makes that picture more accurate, so that your decision making is more justified. So I mean, this is the same for anyone who sets up a company or organization, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, more and more, I'm seeing that the route and the journey that you took, you needed to go on that journey because, like what Steve Jobs says, you cannot connect the dots looking forwards. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. Now you've got this platform, which is Edsplorer. You've been in the tech space, you've worked in the technical space, and you have a grasp of what that looks like if you're going to be creating some sort of ed tech or platform that people can utilize. And you've been in sales and marketing. I mean, obviously,
Yep.
selling people on an idea and a philosophy because things have always been done like this around here ever since we've known them to be. Like, you're in an industry where people would say, are you sure about what you're saying? I will have a look at what they did in 1835, you know what I mean? And they still get the answer for that. So you literally have to know how to sell to the audience and also have your message put on
Yeah.
there. And I don't know what the electric engineering was there for, but maybe it was just to give you a jolt, to get started on this endeavor that you're now on. I don't know. What do you think of this?
Yeah. I don't know if you've had this yourself, and I think a lot of people I've spoken to is longitudinally, I love your connecting dots behind you, looking back, where things make sense. Where you have those kind of like epiphany moments, and you may have gone through a difficult experience or a traumatic experience, At the time, it sucks. And you're like, this is awful, But then in the grand scheme of things, and you look back in hindsight, the rearview mirror, and you're like, actually, that led to that. And that insight was really valuable. And it was what you were talking about earlier, Prosper, Hegelian. The Hegelian is often about being dragged from one side and then to the other side is what's called the dialectic. And then out of that, you synthesize something new. So I think in life, we have these opportunity to have these different experiences, different parts of the world, different roles, different careers. And then you kind of accumulate that and you build something from those different experiences, whether they were good or bad ones. And I've kind of got that sense of like that career in sales was useful to me. That career in engineering was useful to me. And the other bits and bobs and things, I still haven't seen the value of my paper round when I was 14, but I'm sure there was. But it's kind of like, how do you use that? It was there for a reason, and what could you take from it? And how do you know that you've grown from it? And I think that's where reflection is also valuable for all business owners and anybody working in an organization as well. Where they've come from should help inform their future.
Well, absolutely. If you thinking of the paper route, did you do it by walking or were you on a bike?
What was that for? Sorry,
With the paper route, you did mention the paper route.
Paper. Yeah, actually, that was walking.
Yeah.
I remember having this bag on my shoulder and like, just delivering these newspapers in the evening, doing the evening run and stuff like that for a bit of pocket money. And it was good. I had a good slog as well, but it was good, honest labor. You saw your productivity because your bag was empty at the end of the day. So there's always positive takeaways, from all these little things where you've achieved something.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you were learning obviously the resilience. You were learning the honesty. What would stop you from just going to find a ditch and ditching those newspapers and then going and say, I've done my part? You know what I mean? So it's things like that. And now you've created something remarkable. So just bringing it back to Edsplorer a little bit, what should educators, students, or parents, or why should they consider Edsplorer as part of their learning journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's kind of like, what's my offering? And so Explorer is actually also a fellowship. So what I've done is I've created a model where I've found other people who are experts in the educational space and specialists in certain fields that I'm not. I have my passion areas, and my big passion areas are what we call learning to learn, which is equipping and empowering young people with all of the skills that they would need to be independent learners who can kind of like live life on their terms. But when I say independent, I mean effective and efficient with their time and energy. So that's a big passion of mine. And actually, I spent 2 years as head of educational partnerships with a Melbourne company, because that's your neck of the woods, called I Can Study. And with I Can Study, we basically, they were real specialists in teaching learn to learn skills, edtech company, so online, teaching it direct to children. And so I'm still friends with them, but they're on the other side of the world near you. But that's taught me a lot of things about how to empower young kids. So one of my major offering, like, this is where I'd probably would be considered an expert, is around how to bring learning to learn into the education system, workshops. It can also be extended to professionals. So if you're working in a business, this is such a valuable area because it's about how to learn efficiently and really effectively. It's not taught at schools. It's science-based, and there are all sorts of insights that I could share about that process. As I said, I Can Study absolutely brilliant at that, and they've got online programs. But if you're a school, I would be the person to come to, and we can do workshops and professional development, and even do development with your students and your parents as well. So that's my real true passion, is learning to learn.
Fantastic. And I would support you all the way. I've got a 10-year-old that I constantly fight with because I ask her every single day, what did you learn today? And it's only now that it's clicking. But before, she would like to tell me stuff that she knew the answer to. And that wasn't learning, that was just being a parrot. And I hope that's not what is representative of the educational system, because that would be very,
Yeah,
very
I
painful.
made that mistake as a parent. I'd say I'm again a successful educational expert, but I'm not an expert as a parent. I mean, it is such a hard thing, isn't it? I had the same experience. I got twins. They're 12 years old, and I used to ask them that nerdy question. What did you learn today, and what have you? And then the question really, I think. Sorry for the background noise there. The question really is, how was it? How were things? How did they go? What did you enjoy? Tell me something that happened today, and come in from an oblique route rather than that sort of typical teacher question. And then often tell me when I'm not expecting it as well. About what they've learned and what's interesting them. So I think the main thing is to know that find out what they're interested in, start from there, and then sooner or later you'll get to the what they're really learning. And but you can't come in with a direct question. And so many parents have the same issue with kids. It's like I talk to them, but they're like teenagers already, and they're only 9 years old, and they're batting me off. So it's really about their growth, and that's the sort of the bigger question, really.
Absolutely. And if somebody's watching this right now and is intrigued about, your operations, or they want to involve their school or their community into, Edsplorer, and how you can help them, what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and you can see a little Edsplorer tag by my name, so it's easy to find me there. And on the website as well, edsplorer.com. You can find me there, and I'd be happy to connect. I'm fascinated by people's stories, just like you are, Prosper. We all come from the different walks of life, different backgrounds. We've all got great stories to tell. So I love to connect to people and put people first, and education is a byproduct of that.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, I will definitely put all those links in the show notes below, and how people find their way to the Explorer. Now, as you would understand, we did talk about obviously COVID and what it ushered in, which is a whole string of technologies that are now, we never knew things like this existed yesterday, but they're already mainstream by Monday morning. Like, obviously Zoom was always there, but now it's become the main thing that people can actually, connect through the world. We also have the advent of AI, and AI has now been integrated into just about everything that we have. I woke up this day and my emails wanted to write themselves, and I'm like, okay, when you guys are done, just let me know what I need to engage with, and then I will come back, because it's just getting too fast. Are our kids, are our schools equipped for the world that we're stepping into?
Probably not. Is I think the point you raised there is about control and prediction, and it's almost impossible to have that crystal ball to predict this future. And there's a term, and you're probably familiar with this because it's often used in the business world, about VUCA. That the business world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I think even more so now. It's very hard to put your finger on it. And again, empathy for any business owner trying to make sense of where this world is going and where our societies are going. This is this is a hard thing, but that's what we've got to navigate. Yet, because we can't predict that, we can't control that future. So, the only thing we can do is to give that control to the children and help them as best we can with the skills around learning. And
Mm.
you can give them those skills, they can then have the agility of mind and the skills, the mental skills, cognitive skills, the resilience that you talked about earlier, the grit and determination, the goal focus, stability, strategic ability, metacognition, which all of these things are great for business. We need to give those to children in schools, and we need to build that into the curriculum in schools, and we turn it into the language of schools and the business of schools as well. So there needs to be a big shift or pivot in education from a top-down knowledge delivery system to an empowering system that gives children the skills that they need for life, the learning skills, the social emotional skills, the communication skills, to really, really, truly thrive on their own terms.
Mm. Now, I mean, obviously, we live in a very different world right now. During the weekend, Leo, I went, just across the street from me. There's a family that we sort of hang around with, and yeah, it was just a Saturday. We had a barbecue and things of that nature, and their son had an Apple Watch, had those Meta glasses, and had a phone. While I didn't check, but I'm pretty sure his Neuralink was fully charged because he was just really excited, to see us. But 2 minutes in, he said hi to everybody else, puts on his glasses, and he's back onto his things. And
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, okay, so is this the world we're stepping our kids into? Is this what the school also is going to reciprocate? Because I don't think this amount of dopamine is
Yeah.
also ushered at the school canteen.
No, no, and there's a real. So you do a SWOT analysis in business. You need to do a SWOT analysis around technology in schools. It's like, where is it useful? Where is there opportunity to strengthen learning and improve learning? But where is it a threat? What's the risk? And here, that depiction for me is, I don't want to judge your friends, but there is a real risk. And
You
as you
can.
say,
They don't watch my podcast as yeah.
okay, right. So let me explain this then from a science perspective, because this is a lot to do with self-regulation and loss of self-regulation. Is you mentioned the word dopamine. That's one of the heavy hitters in terms of our chemicals. Dopamine is a very natural chemical, of course. It's important. It's a reward drug. There are others we need as well. Serotonin and others. But the problem with dopamine and social media and immersion, full immersion here, is it's hijacking our normal systems, because you're getting, for no effort at all, high frequency of things that you're interested in and excited, or unique, novel, funny, and it's just going boom, 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 and it's giving you pulses of dopamine for no effort. And that's not the natural rule of life. It's usually effort, reward. So what it's doing is it's hijacking that system. And because of neuroplasticity, is literally bit by bit rewiring that system. And the offset or the cognitive cost of that, or the social cost, is that child might not have the ability to have a empathetic, listening conversation. How are you? How's it going? What you've been doing? Because their emotional system is being hijacked by the technology and full immersion. Understandably, this stuff is exciting and it's great and it's addictive, and the social media companies know that, and so their algorithm is literally programmed to hijack your attention and keep you on. What if teachers knew those algorithms? What if they knew how to hijack the attention system of a child in a good way, keep them really engaged, keep them really exciting? Because the formula is the same. And actually, this is an area that I focus on with learning to learn as well. And it's also something that I Can Study does really well in Melbourne as well. They teach, how to control, manage, prevent procrastination, to manage distraction. Because if these things are out of kilter, that's what they're doing. They're hijacking our system, and it's all about balance. B is the magic word. Balance is the magic word in the education system. We don't need radical solutions on either side. It's about how do we bring technology in, use it well to serve learning, but it's not the be all and end all. And if it is, it's really perilous.
I like that because so many parents are raising their kids out of guilt. See, I wasn't able to afford this, I wasn't able to get this as a kid. Now, for a parent like myself, I grew up playing with sticks and stones, so the next available thing my kids will be getting is a ruler. Now, thank you so much, Leo, for the time that we've spent on the call today. You've really blown it out of the park, what it is that we are missing out on and how Edsplorer can actually be of benefit to those that are willing to take that route. Now, before we conclude, I mean, you introduced us to a young Leo who obviously grew up in not so much of a good neighborhood, and I don't think you had any meta glasses or any Neuralink things coming out of any of your crevices like the kids at these days. But if you would come across a kid like that who is obviously very entitled, doesn't even have any social skills, doesn't even know where it's all start and end, as long as it's not on a phone, it doesn't register in their brain. What sort of path would you want them to get on, or how would you put them on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, it's such a tough question, because every child is different. But we know that there's an issue. We know there's a
My
problem. And I
neighbor's
think,
kid. Talk to my neighbor's kid.
yeah, it's so hard to convince a young person, because you're just a patronizing adult telling them what to do. I know as a parent, it's sometimes harder to tell your children than if another teacher speaks with them and gives them wisdom, because they always see their parents as biased, whereas the teacher is perceived as more impartial. So often that coaching and that mentoring will come best, and this is not to criticize parents because I am one, but will come best from a professional. You cannot, you can reason with a child. You should always reason with a child, and you should always say why. This is why. The more we can have bite-sized explanations for children, saying, "Look, this is going to potentially damage you. I love you. I really care about you, and I care about your future." So we need to have some rules to the game about how we're using this and how often. So with children, it's about children that actually do like structure. They do like some sort of rules and agreements. And if we call them common agreements rather than, the law, it is better. So we say, look, let's strike up some agreements that we can stick to, which are good for you, but also protect you, but also give you some freedom to play and enjoy these tools, because they are pleasurable tools. I think that's the way to go with kids. The mistakes I've made as a parent are to kind of like just lay it down flat and then punishment, consequence. And then we've had these terrible struggles and arguments and fights at home, and which I truly regret. So it's really trying to come in from an angle of empathy with a child and just say, look, I get it. This stuff is incredibly fun and addictive, but it's proven it will damage you in the long term. And actually, scarily, there's some science reports coming out now about the damage this potentially does. And there's a book by a guy called Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation, which is talking about why this is happening and how it's going to impact their mental health, but also their ability to connect and communicate with other human beings. So we absolutely need to act, and we need to, if you're in a school and you're ahead, you need to be educating your parents on this topic from an angle of support, because they need that help.
Absolutely. Now, Leo, thank you so much for this. I mean, obviously, as somebody who's in the education you literally taught us, the beats and handles of everything to do with your field. Now, what's next? What can people anticipate with Edsplorer, since this is only getting started? and I can actually smell that new car smell, emanating from, everything that you've been doing there.
Was that like amateurness? Is that smell amateur? That's it's a great question, and again, that crystal ball doesn't exist. I know the vision. The vision is really clear on the website, and it's a genuine vision. And people who are fellow explorers buy into that vision as well. So I want to grow the fellowship. I want to be out there more, doing more in the world around learning to learn and empowering children, taking a much more inclusive, empathy-driven approach to education. Want to reframe curriculum where we can, and really, yeah, just empower the learning of children as much as possible, which is shifting the angle. So I think there'll be more speaking. I'm a public speaker. I do speak. I'm a keynote speaker quite often in conferences. Still learning that game, and trying to really push out the message as much as possible. And I think that's the responsibility that I've got. When you know what you now know, that you have responsibility as an educator to share it. And it's not the gospel. it's not some sort of quack thing. It's based on real research, and I have a duty to try and share that as well. But also I want to get paid, so I need to feed my own family, and I want to get my courses and my programs, do more of those as well. And those are steadily taking off, and I want to do as much as I can. Also with companies, if they're interested. It's really quite exciting, lightning stuff they would not have heard about and they would not have learned in school.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be an education podcast if we don't leave without any homework. What can people do moving forward?
I think that's a great question because we're all different. We're all in different places. We talked about the internet, right? The internet is full of rich jewels around learning to learn. If you're really interested and you want to do an online course, I would recommend I Can Studies course. It's absolutely brilliant and it's game changing. They got very high links on Trustpilot. But I would read around a little bit around learning to learn space, the sciences of learning, and see what you can take. What can you take from that you can use in your own life, either in your company or organization, or personally. So I'd say it's an easy cop-out answer, but the internet.
Absolutely. Wow. What an incredible journey we've actually shared with Leo Thompson today. I mean, from his passion for transforming education to the challenges and triumphs that has shaped Edsplorer. It's been a masterclass in resilience, innovation, and impact. And I can't thank you, my man, for obviously, being patient with us today while we're trying to learn all we can, from the work that you have been doing, Leo.
Thank you. Thanks for your great questions, Prosper, as well. The way you bring people's stories out, I think, is terrific. And the way you get those nuggets of wisdom from people as well. So all the best with what you're doing, and keep knocking it out of the park.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will receive that. It's been a lot of learning to get to that part. So you'll be proud, that we've put the books behind me to actual good use. Now, here's what I want you to do. Homework for you, the listener today. And thank you so much for watching up until this end. This has been, one of the longest ones, but it's not every day we come across an Edsplorer here, so we literally had to wring out everything we could, just to get all the details and information, because when pioneers show up, we want to know where they've been, who they are, and where they're headed to. Right, so what I want you to do is rewatch this episode if you just need a reminder that challenges can actually lead to purpose, because as you have discovered, Leo has put together everything along his journey and all those rocks that were being thrown at him, and has built a wall that he's now using as an explorer there. And what he did not need, he has taken away, just like Michelangelo was taking away all the pieces of the marble that did not make the sculptor. And if you got everything that you wanted from this, I encourage you to share this with the principal of your kids' school. Those people need to know that things like this exist, or to share it with somebody who's passionate about education, or they're feeling stuck in their journey. And definitely they will thank you for it. I was taught in life to always thank the people that teach you good music, show you good new places, and introduce you to new books. And I think this is what we've just done today on this show, on the Online Prosperity Show. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more stories that inspire, educate, and connect with us. And Lloyd, thank you. I know you're going to be watching this. Thank you for bringing your brother to the show again. Until next time, remember, every journey begins with a single step, and the best time to take that next step is right about now. Bye for now.